A New Zealand entrepreneur is naming and shaming businesses he says are abusing the government wage subsidy scheme and should pay the money back immediately. Nick Mowbray of Zuru Toys says large corporates have been taking millions from the scheme, despite still turning significant profits and some even paying shareholder dividends. And while they might meet the criteria for the wage subsidy that pays up to $585 a week for each qualifying employee, he says ethically and morally it is wrong. So Nick Mowbray says he'll donate $1,000 for every corporate that's found to be taking unfair advantage of the government scheme that he reckons is being abused.
I just think that, so many companies are happy to privatise profits in the good times, and as soon as there are bad times, they really want to socialise any kind of potential losses and take a handout. And so many of these companies are reporting profits but taking the wage subsidy at the same time. And I just think the wage subsidy was not designed for these, large corporate companies. If you look at the NZX 50 in the last 2 years, it's up almost 30%. In the last 12 months, it's up 7%. And, a lot of these companies are reporting large profits and then taking this wage subsidy at the same time. And ultimately that has to get paid or repaid by New Zealanders. And I just don't think it's fair. Capitalism isn't a one-way street. You just don't get to take the profits in the good times, and when you have bad times, put your hand out and have, hard-working Kiwis pay for that.
So who specifically are you calling out here? What examples are you thinking of?
Well, I think there are loads and loads and loads of examples, and I'm seeing more all the time and hearing about more all the time. But there are lots of companies. I mean, take for example Somerset Villages. They're a retirement home business. Of course, the business is not going backwards. I mean, they reported $170 million of net profit last year. They have over $3 billion of assets. Their stock price, more importantly, in the last 12 months is up 34.9%. That's about $460 million of market gains for their shareholders. In the last 12 months, it's almost a record high. There's only one time in history before this where it was higher, and that was only for a few weeks. And they've taken almost $9 million from the government and from Kiwi taxpayers. How is that fair? They just reported, earnings or preliminary earnings year to date of $45 million this year. And so I just feel like this is abusing the intent of the system. The intent of the system was to look after the builder that was, out of work, the restaurant owner that couldn't open, the tourism business that was shattered. This was the intent of the business. It was not intended to prop up corporate profits. I'll give you another one. This one's even more horrific. And I've actually reached out to their general manager in New Zealand to see if they've repaid it yet. But Estee Lauder is a global consumer goods company with a market cap of $77 billion US, so over 100 billion New Zealand dollars. They reported revenue this year of $14.6 billion, which was down 4% from $14.9 billion last year. They're in the consumer goods business, which is on fire through COVID, especially things like skincare. And they made a profit of almost $700 million US. This is a US listed company on the New York Stock Exchange, and it took almost $900,000 from the New Zealand taxpayer, which is being siphoned effectively offshore. How is it that a consumer goods company, which is the same business that we're in, is taking money from the New Zealand taxpayer?
Let's take a look at the criteria that was set around the wage subsidy scheme, right? You had to have be able to say you had a loss of 30% over a certain period of time in order to qualify for 12 weeks of the payment. The next tranche, it was a 40% loss, and the most recent one with the resurgence was a 40% loss as well. If you meet the criteria, why shouldn't you take the money?
Well, I think a lot of companies are actually manipulating that as well. So I've heard of multiple professional service firms, law firms, accountancy firms that are delaying billing so they can actually show the 30% decline. I mean, most of them were working from home. It was business as usual. So I think there's a moral obligation, because at the end of the day, it's our children, our children's children, they're going to have to pay this debt. It's $13,600 million, to put it into perspective. It's a lot of money.
So you're
And
suggesting
it has to be paid back.
So you are suggesting that some businesses have deferred transactions or payments in order to qualify, and even if they weren't doing that, you feel if they're still bringing in the bucks, even if it is at a reduced amount, they should just suck it up.
I agree. If you can financially sustain your business, then you shouldn't be taking a handout. And it's clear that lots of companies are abusing it because it's just there. And I just don't think or feel that was the true intent of the scheme. It was to help those people that really genuinely needed it. And a lot of instances, take Estee Lauder, and I have asked if they're planning on paying it back, their business is reported globally to be down 4%. 4%. And that's not due to COVID. That's due to just running their business. And so how have they taken $900,000 from a New Zealand taxpayer?
So let's play
So I think there's a lot of examples where business isn't down 30 or 40%. But if you're still reporting these mega profits, for example, take Briscoe's, I think it's reported $27 million profit for the first half of the year. And they actually came out and said that after lockdown, their sales surged because all these people were sitting at home for 6 weeks saving money. They came out and their sales surged like 36 or 37 or 38%. And they took an $11.8 million wage subsidy. So, in effect, New Zealanders are underwriting their wage book when their sales or their profits haven't been affected. Their profits are the same this year as they were last year.
So we're in the early stages of this, some people would argue. The pandemic is an ongoing situation. The help is available now. Could these companies not argue that they are insulating themselves against an uncertain future?
Well, clearly not, because they're reporting these profits.
Right now they are.
And in the case of Somerset, in the case of Somerset Homes, their stock value is up $460 million over the last 12 months. Well, 7 of that has been since COVID started. So, I mean, there's no real argument there. The fact is either they repay it or New Zealand taxpayers or workers repay it. Shouldn't these companies be paying it? And shouldn't the shareholders have some kind of fiscal responsibility? Why is it that the shareholder comes first? We're in a crisis, and this is unprecedented. Surely the shareholder can be knocked down the list a few pegs. Maybe your team members, your staff come first, and then maybe the country, and then maybe your shareholders. It's okay to have a bad year as a shareholder. Why is it that in good times they're happy to privatise all of those profits and take all of those profits off the table, but in bad times they want to socialise any potential losses? It's not fair.
I understand your argument, but how do you know that more people would not have lost their jobs if these wage subsidies hadn't been collected? Because that's the risk, isn't it? Regardless of their profit situation, they may have rationalised their businesses and cut more people if they didn't take that wage subsidy, out of their own choice perhaps. But the person at the bottom of the heap is the one who would pay for that, isn't it?
No, because that's not them being corporately responsible. If they're producing all of these profits, the first person or the first people you should be looking after in a crisis is your team members. They are the people that look after your customers. They are effectively your family, and you look after them because it's a human thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
Yep. Nick, I understand the argument you are making, and so will a number of people. But the question remains, if they didn't take this money, they may have taken the opportunity to cut jobs. I know you say that's not the right thing to do. That's not the right thing to do morally.
Hundreds of jobs anyway. I've had people.
But how do we know more jobs wouldn't have gone? How do we know more jobs wouldn't have disappeared if they hadn't taken this money? And are you prepared? Are you prepared to kind of take that risk?
You're missing the point. The retirement village, like Somerset, their business isn't down. Their business is not going down. People aren't not going into retirement homes. That's not happening. They're an essential business. They've exploited the system. Their business isn't going backwards. Estee Lauder is in consumer goods and consumer products. Their business isn't going down.
So, Nick, let's go through the list. Briscoe's, should they pay it back?
Yes.
SkyCity?
Yes.
Somerset Villages?
Yes.
Estee Lauder?
Yes.
And any others on the top of your head?
Look, I think there's going to be a long, long list. I've only been looking at it for like 12 hours, and I'm even considering putting up something with people that come forward on companies that have abused the system. Zuru will donate maybe $1,000 to charity for every one. So we can see more of them and get more of them to come out of the woodwork.
So, sorry, Nick, to be clear on that, what are you proposing there, potentially?
I'm working on it now, potentially. So Zuru will give to charity $1,000 for everyone that comes forward with a company that has potentially abused the system.
And if they turn out to have abused the system, are you announcing
Correct.
this now, Nick? If it turns out that a company, in your view, has abused the system by,
Sure.
still collecting big profits but taking the wage subsidy as well, what commitment are you making?
We'll donate $1,000 for everyone that proves to be doing this to a charity.
And that was Nick Mowbray there. We did contact Briscoe Group boss, Rod Duke. He declined to comment to Checkpoint. SkyCity didn't respond to our requests for comments. Somerset has declined to comment. And we made several attempts to contact Estee Lauder and we were unsuccessful getting through to them. Let us know what you think about that call for those companies to pay the money back.